Yo, this video's a re-upload. It was supposed to go live today, but it accidentally went live a week ago because I just misscheduled it. Now, I caught my mistake an hour after it went live, but I think since YouTube pushed notifications for it the first time around, it didn't push any now that I actually want it uploaded, so it's not really getting many views. I'm also trying to make sure I get a video out each week, and it doesn't look good when YouTube says I did 2 one week and none the next, so sorry for the hassle if you did get notified multiple times. Anyways. So, it's been about a year since I started doing W&30 model trains on the channel. I thought it'd be fun to commemorate that. I've certainly come a long way from being a scared little guy learning how to paint in the first place to someone quite confident in their skills, even if I am prone to procrastination. I swear I'll start painting the layout someday. We do have some building kits on order. Well, we first started by painting a combine, so why not paint another? After all, I have 21 passenger cars and I really only need the 4 I've already got. I've been planning to repaint and sell the surplus of coaches that I have, and this is the perfect excuse to do so. Or an opportunity. You could call it an opportunity. So, let's replicate the original W&PK paint job. But it's been a year, so why don't we add in a couple of small improvements along the way, Well, I'll tell you why not. Of the 21 coaches I have, most don't have handbrakes. They've all been damaged, and I don't want to sell cars with glaring defects. Now, I could order replacements from Wiseman Model Services. They do sell white castings, and I plan to order those. But I'm going on vacation in a week. I can't afford the luxury of patience. Now, I do have some cars with handbrakes, but I do not want to alter them. I'm not going to be disassembling my main fleet, and as for the Halloween car that I painted last year, even if I do sell it, I have no plans on repainting it. It looks fine as is, and the same goes for the Colorado and Southern set that I have. But there is one car that I could use, and it's painted up in a single color already. I bought this combine back in July of 2023 when I was first getting started in W&30, and I kind of expected this to be my only coach. This was before TK sent us 10 tacky Hawthorne Village coaches to repaint. Speaking of tacky Hawthorne Village, though, this car seems to have actually been one of those before, but it was repainted by its previous owner. And, actually, modified. This was sold by Arizona Woodstocker on eBay who likes modifying their cars, so it's no surprise that the interior has an extra 2 rows of seats, though you'd never really notice that when the train's running since there are no windows to help show this change. In the past, my father encouraged me to leave this car alone. At the time, we didn't know how skilled of a painter I would wind up being, and having a spare, undecorated car to run when I, inevitably, screwed up another coach's paint job was a nice failsafe. But it's been a year. I've proven myself, and we don't really need the spare anymore. Plus, for the time constraints I have, starting with this pre-painted coach helps a ton. Let's begin. First comes disassembly, as it is always easier to get good angles on certain parts you want to paint if there aren't other parts in your way. I was hoping to avoid having to unsolder the interior light, but after removing the roof, it quickly became clear I wasn't going to get anywhere without temporarily removing those wires, so I bit the bullet. I didn't record this because it wound up delaying the project by a few days. My father and I struggled to find the sponge we normally use for soldering and couldn't do anything until we found it. The ironic part? We only found the sponge when we gave up and decided to start cutting up a new one. Once we did find it, though, everything else moved quickly. The baggage doors came off before I even did any soldering, so all that was left to do was the walls and the windows, and that's it. That was all that I needed to separate for this particular project. The first part I wound up painting was the end platforms, using Ceramcoat Territorial Beige to make it seem like there was a small wooden deck at the end of the car. Getting the paint to line up right and not cover the edges of the steps took some very careful work, and I occasionally had to use a toothpick to remove any excess paint, but I think the hardest part of painting these platforms was specifically painting between the stove and bathroom stall on the passenger side of the car. Now, I could have gone out of my way to remove the floor and then the stove, but the bathroom should have been removable with the floor in place. Unfortunately, it seems the bathroom was just glued in place, and I really didn't want to test my luck with the stove, so I just brute forced it and suffered for a little bit. It wasn't that bad, though, to be honest. Next came the trim. I went with Ceramcoat Brown Iron Oxide, which honestly might have been a little bit too dark of a color. It did add some fun color texture, but it was so similar in tone to the dark green base of the car that it's hard to differentiate at a glance. That was kind of the goal though, as I wanted the color to be different enough to stand out on close inspection, but to otherwise blend in at a glance. That way, I could better draw attention to the windows and the doors, which I planned on painting a different color from the beginning. Plus, the paint job would have a smaller chance of being an eyesore if I happened to use a bad color combination. Now, I like testing my colors before diving into a project, which was a bit of a problem for this combine. Now, you can see the test for this project, it's right here, but it was tricky, specifically because of the base. I didn't know what the base green was, and I had to wind up using a different green for the test, trying to get as close of a match as I could on short notice. Now, this made me wary that the test results wouldn't be as good at representing the project as a whole, but the results were so good that it gave me enough confidence to try this paint job without much worry. For the doors and window frames, I just wound up using Territorial Beige again. Since tan is basically a lighter brown, this matched the trim quite well, and helped to maintain some sense of color continuity while still allowing the doors and window frames to stand out from the rest of the car. After a couple of touch-ups, all that was left to do was reassemble the car. Windows snap in with a little glue, body goes on at the same time as the doors, and the soldering happens off camera again, but this time it was because I was lazy instead of doing some wild sponge chase, so at least I didn't waste 2 days. With that, we're actually not done. I'll make this quick, but I gotta do an obligatory shill of some sort since I'm selling this thing, right? It's on eBay for 5 days. Bidding ends on September 14th, 2024 at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I don't need this car, and hey, you can help support the channel and some future projects while also getting a cool one-of-a-kind combine for your own railroad. Alright, anyways. I'm pleased with how this car turned out. The browns really complement the green better than I initially expected them to, giving this car the sort of vibe, the feeling of a forest, though I initially thought of it as a coffee shop and have thus dubbed this the Colonel Cooper, after a local shop that I used to love going to as a kid. This is a great generic paint job that still has its personality and quirks, but it will find itself at home no matter what model railroad it finds itself on. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you for tuning in till the end, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, folks.